The official job numbers are dark thanks to the shutdown, but the private trackers aren't, pointing to a U.S. labor market that looks cooler, not collapsing, and a low hire, low fire reality that hits paychecks and mobility. Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi's long goodbye follows with a record that remade healthcare, climate, infrastructure, and civil rights. Elon Musk just won a path to a $1 trillion payday at Tesla. Will separate genuine incentives from concentrated influence. Michael Burry is shorting Nvidia and Palantir will weigh the call and the bias that follows a single legendary win. And this week's elections have Senator Ted Cruz sounding the alarm for the Republicans, while Democrats confront the lingering drag of the socialist label. All that and more today.
Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker.
Hi, and welcome. Thanks for joining me today. It is Friday, November 7th, 2025. A great day to be alive and looking at the world and the top stories of the day. Let's check in with the market vitals from yesterday, as we do each day here. S&P 500 closed at 6,720, down 1.12%. The Nasdaq Composite closed at 23,053, down 1.90%. Always keep in mind the long term. S&P 500 over the last 25 years has gone up on average 8.32% per year. The Nasdaq 100 has gone up on average 9.09% a year. So please keep in mind the long term. Okay, let's dive right into issue one today. The job market is cooling, but not collapsing. This is what an economy on pause feels like. With the government still shut down, there's no official jobs report for a second straight month. Private trackers show a labor market that has softened since summer, but hasn't fallen off a cliff. ADP sees hiring wobble, then rebound. Other data sets disagree. The clearest through line is a low hire, low fire limbo. Employers aren't adding much, but they're not slashing much either, other than big tech companies. Wells Fargo calls it treading water. There are warning flares, big layoff headlines, job growth concentrated in healthcare, and a confidence dip among workers. The Fed says it can still spot material change without the official data. But by the time jobless claims jump, it may be too late. For now, it's slow down, not spiral, yet the ground under our feet is loose, or at least it feels loose. Okay, so what's the real message here about the economy? Nobody really knows what's going on in the economy because our government is shut down. It's not giving us data, but it feels as if it's in kind of a pause mode. No massive firings outside of tech, but no quick hirings either. We're all in this state of limbo. Let's go a little bit deeper and look at some of the underlying facts. Now, a lot of people, a lot of mainstream centrist, right of center, and left of center economists predicted that we would probably be in a recession by now, given their distaste for tariffs, specifically Trump's tariffs, specifically the biggest tariffs this country has ever seen. It hasn't happened yet. Doesn't mean it can't, but always good reminder that economists are often wrong. I mean, virtually every economist that had any kind of a media platform, and certainly all those polled by Bloomberg just a few years ago, predicted a massive recession, and the country didn't go into a recession a few years ago. So economists don't know everything, but those who just operate off their gut are right sometimes, wrong sometimes as well. Now, a couple more facts. The Fed cut rates a quarter point and says it can still detect major shifts without Bureau of Labor Statistics data. Maybe they can. I mean, they certainly have access to other forms of data. And if you're a board governor or chairman of the Federal Reserve, you can call any CEO in the world. They'll call you back and you can get insight onto particular industries, companies, and sectors. But worker confidence is falling. It's fell to a multi-month low. Uh, Graduates are not particularly feeling optimistic. And it just feels like there's a state of malaise in the country. Now, for those who were so gung ho on the economy, saying, Trump is really making a difference, his aggressive tariff posture is helping. For the people who are really, really pro MAGA, pro Republican, pro Trump, they're probably feeling a little deflated this week, given the massive losses by statistically significant margins in races around the country, not just in traditionally Democratic places like New Jersey, but real swing states like Virginia. To lose by more than double digits has some people feeling like maybe this King Trump hegemony that could last for decades isn't really going to last. Maybe it's a temporary thing. So my own sense is that there is a real drag on the economy because a tariff is a tax, and we have seen massive tax increases on the American people. I know it. I feel it firsthand. Just yesterday, I had to write a check for $332 just to get the piece of a table for a dining room table that I had made for my new home. That was just to get the legs into the country. So it's all well and good to say, oh, other countries are going to pay for it, or Mexico's going to build the wall, and all these unfair countries are going to have to pay the tariffs, but it's not really working out that way. If you've had to pay any tariffs specifically, I'd love to hear from you. You can post your comments right here if you're watching the show live, listening to it live. If you're watching on demand, I would love to hear from you. This is an interactive show. It's really a conversation between you and me where we filter the top stories of the day through the lens of communication skills, personal development skills, all with the goal of making you more successful in your personal life, in your professional life. One of the lessons I think is important to understand about what's going on in our current economy is the importance of truly listening to people. Right now, I do not see people in Washington, authorities in Washington, actually listening to citizens around the country, small business owners, farmers, because if they did, they would not hear this huge push, this huge demand to tariff our trading, to put tariffs on our trading partners. And look, we all run off sometimes half-baked saying, oh, I got the greatest idea ever. I've done it before. I've started TV shows before the internet. I've started websites before that I thought were brilliant. And you know what? No one else did. They failed. Fortunately, no one really paid for that other than me. But when you're in political office and have high power, to just go off and do things when everyone across the spectrum is either telling you it's a bad idea or we don't really want that, it should give you pause. It should make you wonder, what am I missing here? Could I possibly be wrong? That is the mark of a real leader. And that's the mark of someone with self-awareness. Every self-aware person realizes fundamentally, I could be wrong. I'm not seeing a lot of that in the White House right now. This push for tariffs, some very strong questions from the Supreme Court this week, basically saying, okay, this is really a tax, isn't it? Because someone has to pay for it. It's the government authority forcing people to give money to the government. Well, that's a tax, right? And it obviously is. And the Constitution of the United States says only the Congress has the ability to raise taxes. And then you have this odd situation where the administration, before the Supreme Court this week, said, well, you shouldn't really think of it as a tax because it's not really generating any revenue. Well, time out. The one thing we've heard again and again from Washington is we're bringing in all these billions of dollars from outsiders so that you Americans save your money, and we're sticking it to people from other countries. So very clear contradiction there. You can't say it's raising tons of money and then say, oh, it's not actually raising any money. That's a part of the problem. The other huge disconnect with the messaging is there's a 1977 act that says under emergencies, the President of the United States can, in fact, put forth tariffs. Now, the common definition of emergency is what you and I think of as an emergency: an economic depression, a war, some country bringing in massive amounts of drugs or harming us. Oh, at the very same time, the administration is saying we have an emergency and that's why we have to have the tariffs. The administration is saying the economy has never been better thanks to our leadership. Again, it doesn't matter where you are on the ideological spectrum. If you believe in such a thing as logic, contradictory information, this just isn't adding up. You can't say the economy is stronger than it's ever been, hugely better than it was when the previous administration was in, and also say things are so awful that it's an emergency. It's just not adding up. How is the economy in your town, in your community, in your state, in your country? I would love to hear from you. Please post your comments, your thoughts. Give me an update. Let me know where you live, what country you're in, and how your economy is doing. I'd love to hear from you. We have a very international audience for Filtered. So some countries do better than others. That's life. Some go up while others go down, and other cycles, they can go a different way. I would love to hear from you. So please post your comments wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast. More news in a moment.
Filtered is brought to you by the following. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Want to become a better speaker, leader, or communicator? Start with the TJ Walker Success Library. It's 5 of my most practical books, covering everything from public speaking to meeting interviews and persuasive messaging, all for only $9.95. I've trained presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, and now you can get the same wisdom in a fast, affordable format. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download your copies instantly. Thanks for listening. If you like today's episode, you'll love my online courses at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Check them out now and level up your skills.
Welcome back to Filtered. Pelosi's retirement and record power isn't a speech, it's a vote count. Nancy Pelosi says she'll retire at the end of her term, closing nearly 4 decades in Congress and 2 history-making turns as Speaker of the House. She announced the decision by video, thanking San Francisco and promising a final year of service. Her legacy is turning razor-thin margins into landmark law across healthcare, finance, infrastructure, climate, and civil rights. Even rivals took notice. As former Speaker, Republican Newt Gingrich put it, you could argue she's been the strongest speaker in U.S. history. Gingrich himself praising her ability to move big bills with tiny margins, from the Affordable Care Act to the Inflation Reduction Act, from Wall Street reform to veterans care. Pelosi didn't just preside, she produced. Whether you love her politics or not, the map of modern American policy bears her fingerprints. Okay, what's the real message here? Whether you love Pelosi or not, she will go down in history as one of the most powerful speakers in the history of the country, if not the most powerful. She knew how to count votes. She knew how to get legislation over the line, turning it into law. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. Now, to most Republicans, conservatives, MAGA members in the United States, the mere mention of the word Pelosi is as if you said the devil. It's if you've said the boogeyman is here, because she became a favorite target in TV commercials for Republican candidate direct mail campaigns. You just talk about the San Francisco Democrats, and how awful they are, how they're going to destroy the country, and you put a picture of Nancy Pelosi, and the money would flow in. Now, let's go behind the theatrics and look at what's really happening here. Both political parties have to raise money. They're always looking for symbols of someone from the other party that can scare, induce fear in their followers. And Nancy Pelosi did that among Republicans. Now, a case can be made. The reason she was vilified so much was not because of awful things she did, although a conservative could certainly disagree with any one policy she advocated. She became feared, hated, loathed because she was so extraordinarily effective. What leaders of any one party hope that the leader does in another party is give a bunch of speeches, say crazy things, be ineffective, and get nothing done. That's not Nancy Pelosi's track record. She, in fact, wasn't really known for being fantastic in the media and for really giving riveting speeches, highly persuasive. She was known as the person who could put together coalitions, who could lobby her own members, who could gently twist arms, who could find compromises, figure out ways of getting legislation actually passed and turned into law. So if you do believe government can work and you want it to work, Pelosi is someone near and dear to your heart. Let's look at some of her biggest accomplishments. The Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, just barely squeaked by the House and the Senate. She made it possible. Dodd-Frank financial reform. This is the post-crisis Wall Street rules. Created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Wouldn't have happened without her. Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act back in 2009. Now, you might not care about that, but it made it easier for people to file suits against pay discrimination. The Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Hate Crimes Act. She helped repeal the Don't Ask, Don't Tell law, which opened up the military service to gay people. So she had a tremendous amount of legislative accomplishment. COVID relief, if all of a sudden you were out of a job during COVID and you needed some money to just pay your bills or eat, you could thank Nancy Pelosi. Again, I understand certainly if you are a conservative and you want the leanest possible government and you want the number one action to be cutting taxes, you're no fan of Nancy Pelosi and you're not disappointed at all that she's retiring. Now, we should point out she did step down from the speaker's role last year. So she has been more or less a regular member of Congress for this term, and she's announced she's not going to be running for re-election. So she does have one more term. She also was running things with the two Trump impeachments and the January 6th Select Committee. So she has been involved in every major legislative decision and effort to advance a Democratic agenda for pretty much the last 40 years, certainly when she was Speaker. She will be missed. Now, having said that, there are a lot of Democrats saying, oh, thank goodness you're finally stepping down. We love you, Nancy, but come on, you're just too old. I mean, Joe Biden could be her little brother. She's that old. She is literally closer to the age of 90 than she is to the age of 80. She's in her mid 80s, but closer to 90. So there are a lot of Democrats saying, look, it's just not a good look for the party when after the Joe Biden fiasco of being in debates looking like this, not seemingly knowing where he is. And excuse me, my friends on the audio podcast, but I just made a face like a dithering old man who doesn't know where he is. Now, Nancy Pelosi always seemed with it. She does not seem like she's lost any of her mental capacity, but at some point, you're closer to 90 than you are to 60, 70, or even 80. There are a lot of young voters who think we just want fresh blood. We just want new people. And in fact, the Democrats still have dozens of more members of Congress over 70 than the Republicans do. They are more geriatric. There's no doubt about it. Having said all that, the current president of the United States will be the oldest person to ever hold that office if he does serve through the rest of this term. And he'll be even older if he stays longer than that. But we'll leave that debate for another day. So many in the Democratic Party are saying, not necessarily we're demanding that you leave Congress right now because she wasn't Speaker, but they are breathing a sigh of relief, saying, okay, you did a great job. We appreciate you, but it is time to let in some new blood, some younger blood, and bring people in. Because let's face it, the Democrats are looking a little long in the tooth. Chuck Schumer is nobody's idea of a spring chicken. One of the most famous, prominent Democratic senators, Bernie Sanders, who is about the same age. He's 84. He's going to be 90 before you can blink your eye. It is time to get some new blood into the Congress, arguably on both sides. But the Democrats are going to have at least one more newcomer in the House at the beginning of 2027. That is when former Speaker Pelosi's term will expire. So I happen to think Speaker Pelosi will go down in history with extreme praise from historians as really one of the ablest politicians in the history of this country. Okay, let's take a moment before we transition to our next topic, and listen to what you have to say. Chewy says Nancy Pelosi was in charge of the Sergeant at Arms on January 6th. Well, certainly that was a scary day, and people came after her. And I think it's great the way that she tried to hold those people accountable and tried to hold Trump accountable for that insurrection. It was absolutely an atrocity that day, which is really why people talk about National Guard going to Portland. We really should have had the National Guard and a lot of other authorities in the Congress on January 6th to prevent these traitors and these insurrectionists from desecrating and actually killing people. Let's not forget, one woman was killed on January 6th. A police officer died the very next day from stress-induced problems from being attacked on January 6th. Tepu writes, I like this guy. Good day, brother, from Central Australia. Well, I like you too. Thank you so much for joining us from Australia. It's great to get such an interesting, fun international crowd for this show here today. And that's one of the modern beauties of living in our internet-connected world. When I started out doing news commentary some 40 years ago, and even longer than that, when I was writing for my student newspaper in college, there was a very limited audience. When I started doing radio and TV commentary in the 1980s in a small town in northern Florida, it was a small, limited audience. These days, anyone, you can do it, I can do it, we can speak and communicate with people around the globe, even if they are literally 12,000 miles away. So that's what's exciting about it. And that's what's been, frankly, a lot of fun in my own career as an online content creator and as a course creator. For those of you who don't know me, I have 300 online courses on public speaking, media training, communication skills training courses. And I have 12 million student enrollments of people just like you. And they're from every single country in the world, except for, I don't think I have anyone in North Korea. Although I do have some clients who've gone on UN missions in North Korea. So it is nice to feel like I'm able to connect with people all across the globe. And 5029 says, you call it insurrection. Who has been charged for insurrection? Well, until the current felon in the White House gave them pardons. That's essentially what all of these insurrectionists were charged with, some of them serving prison sentences. But unfortunately, felons have a code of honor. They look after each other, and they were all released. Some of those insurrectionists have since made threats, life and death threats, to leader Jeffrey. So a bit of a shame. Scott says, have you seen the current occupant of the White House? Not in person, but I see him like you do every single day. We're going to switch to other topics in just a moment, but I do want to continue to hear from you. If you're watching this on demand, don't feel left out. You can post your comments. I typically respond to every comment on this show, regardless of what platform you're on. So please reach out, let us know what you think and where you're hearing this. More in just a moment.
Filtered is brought to you by the following. Get the deeper takes I don't post anywhere else. Subscribe now at substack.com/@TJWalkerSuccess and stay in the loop. For years, people have asked how they could get one-on-one coaching from me inexpensively. Well, now you can, anytime, anywhere with the TJ Walker AI clone. It's like having me in your pocket, ready to help you prep for a speech, polish a pitch, or calm your nerves before a big meeting. You talk to it, it responds like I would, based on my real-world coaching of thousands of leaders and communicators. Check it out at tjwalker.ai. It's not just smart, it's personal. Want to support the show? Skip the ads and buy me a coffee. That's buymeacoffee.com/TJWalker.
We are back. Thanks for joining us. This is Filtered. I'm TJ Walker. Issue 3, Musk's $1 trillion pay package. When compensation mints power, it isn't just a pay story. Tesla shareholders this week approved a plan that could hand Elon Musk nearly $1 trillion in stock if, and that's a big if he hits extreme goals, pushing Tesla's value toward roughly $8.5 trillion, selling 1 million humanoid robots and landing about 10 million paid software subscriptions. Musk called it a whole new book for Tesla. Supporters say investors win only if he delivers. Critics, including public pension officials, argue the deal concentrates too much wealth and influence in one person. The backdrop is inequality. The world's richest man could edge toward $1 trillion personally, raising hard questions about how private wealth translates into market sway, cultural clout, and political gravity. This isn't only a Tesla story, it's a governance and democracy story. Okay, so what's the real message here? Tesla shareholders and the board of directors, they really believe in Elon Musk. They're like, we believe in you completely here. Have more. Take all the money if you want it. Just make this company really live up to its dreams. If he can do it, he's going to get a huge payday. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. So the headline is a little bit misleading. He has to take the company to an $8.5 trillion market cap. No company has ever done that. Nvidia has a current market cap of $5 trillion. That's the biggest ever. So that's a huge, huge jump. If you say to me all of a sudden, TJ, we're going to give you an Olympic gold medal, all you have to do is run a mile in 2.5 minutes. It's not very meaningful. I'm not going to run a mile in 2.5 minutes or 8.5 minutes for that matter. So some of this may just be huge PR spin, story weaving on the part of Musk and Tesla management. So you have to take that into consideration. Let's not forget, if Tesla were valued the way a perfectly fine, profitable car company is valued based on price to earnings ratio of other companies in the industry, it would be worth, what, $80 or $90 billion today. Now, that's not nothing, but you don't get paid $1 trillion for managing an 80 or $90 billion company. You get hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps. So there are larger implications here. Let me state categorically, I am a capitalist. I'm a sane, sensible centrist. I do think that private sector companies should be able to pay their employees, their management, really whatever they want. There's a separate issue of then what does society do? You could have zero income tax if you want, probably too low. You could have 100% income tax. I'd say probably too high. I don't think either one of those statements would really shock most people as extreme. Now, a libertarian would say, of course, income taxes should be zero. But for 98% of the country, they would say, oh, TJ, we can't disagree with either one of those things. Zero is too low, 100% is too high. So then it raises the question, what's the right amount of taxation? Should someone be able to really do massive risk, as Elon Musk has done, work 200 hours a week, as he has done for years and years and years, and get rich? Absolutely, sure. You know, he came this close to being penniless numerous times because of his high risk investment in Tesla in the early days, SpaceX. So I don't begrudge him making a lot of money. You can quibble with whether the board of directors really needed to incentivize him, given how much of his net worth is tied up into Tesla. You could almost make the case that it should really be run more like Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. He gives himself almost no salary or a very small salary. And when he raises the market value of Berkshire Hathaway, he gets richer. They could have simply done it that way because he's got so much money wrapped up into Tesla, he can't really afford to walk away and see hundreds of millions of dollars because a gigantic chunk of his current $500 billion net worth is based in Tesla stock. So here's what I think we as a society have to grapple with. It's fine to say we all believe in the free market enterprise system. And yeah, if you work hard and strike it rich and get lucky, you deserve to be rich. I think that's something most Americans would agree with, regardless of what party or ideology they're in. But at some point, things get so extreme that our basic concepts of reality and a society fall apart. Bear with me in a moment as we walk through this thought experiment. Obviously, if Elon Musk suddenly owned or was worth $30 trillion, basically the value of the entire United States economy in a given year. If he were worth $30 billion, that would give him he could simply go in and say, I am shutting down the city of San Diego. Would we want someone to have that much power? We've already seen with his current power and being able to write a check for hundreds of millions of dollars, that gave him access to this administration to come in and basically decide how everything in our government would run. That's an insane amount of power. Now, you might have liked some of his objectives, but how would you feel if, let's say you're pro-Trump and pro-Musk, how would you feel if Bill Gates goes back into the money-making ventures and is worth $1 trillion and gives, say, $500 million to Bernie Sanders, who somehow becomes president. And Bernie says, okay, Bill, you're now in charge of all healthcare policy, all vaccine policy. You can fire anyone and everyone in the government. And basically, here are the keys to the government. How would you like someone unelected like Bill Gates doing that? Now, you might like Bill Gates, you might like Elon Musk, but I'm pretty sure, regardless of who you are, one of those ideas scares you. That's really the fundamental principle of democracy. When people say we don't want kings here, it's not just that we don't like crowns and people bowing down and being deferential and saying, yes, my lord. It's not just that. It's that the whole concept of democracy is power needs to be diffuse. We don't want any one person simply saying, off with his head because I can. And that's what causes some concern about Elon Musk becoming a trillionaire. Now, he already essentially runs a small town near Austin, Texas, where his headquarters is. Everyone, the mayor, the police force, they all basically work for him. I mean, it's just not hard to imagine that if he goes off on a bender and does a whole bunch of drugs, gets in an argument with someone playing poker or a video game, he just offs them. Again, I'm not asking him to do this or recommending it or saying he has. I'm just saying, imagine if he did that and he's a trillionaire and every single person in that community, that political jurisdiction, that police jurisdiction is 100% dependent on his money. Is he going to get arrested? I don't think so. Is he going to get tried? I don't think so. Is he going to get sentenced to prison? I don't think so. He essentially becomes above the law. So I don't think the solution is to have a government law saying nobody will ever get more than 30 times what the lowest wage is of someone working for their company. There are some who recommend that. And indeed, when you look at the so-called golden eras that the MAGA community says make America great again, they're often referring to the 50s, 60s, 70s, early 80s, when in fact CEOs did get on average about 30 times what the lowest line worker in their company made. But they don't really want to go back. That's not the part they really want to emulate or return to. But now we have a situation where Musk is not making 30 times as much as the average person at Tesla. He's making like 1 trillion times more than the average person. I'm exaggerating, but only slightly. At some point, I do think government needs to come in and say, look, you can be rich. You can be really rich. You can be dirty, stinking, filthy rich. You can be a billionaire many times over. But at some point, we need a little bit of a leveling when it comes to taxation of someone that powerful. Certainly, if you're already worth, let's say, $300 billion, and you had to pay a 1% wealth tax every year, you're at least giving $3 billion back to the coffers. And by most accounts, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, most of these billionaires, pay almost no taxes because it's so easy to have loopholes. They just say, well, I'm not taking a salary. It's all in stock, and I haven't realized my stock gains. So they just get bank loans, realizing they could pay off at any time with their stock. So for the most part, they're paying less in terms of the percentage of their income and their net worth than someone who makes $55,000 a year, or someone who makes $89,000 a year, or two teachers who have a combined income of $120,000 a year. Elon Musk is paying as a percentage of his income much less than that. I think it's time we as a society have to really say, okay, at some point we need a little bit of, not level in the sense that everyone's the same. Everyone is not the same. But taking away a little of this power from someone who has already so much more power than anyone else in our society and spreading it around a little bit. So that's what I think the policymakers in both parties are going to have to look at, because you may like Musk and his politics today, but at some point there are going to be multi-billionaires and perhaps trillionaires who have a different political philosophy than yours. And at some point when you're just so rich, everybody says yes to you. You get everything you want. And there is a name for that. It's called being a king. It's called being a god. And the whole premise of American democracy and democracy anywhere is we don't want to be ruled by gods and kings. We want individuals to have power and equal rights to everyone else. What do you think? Post your comments. I would love to hear from you. We do have some more comments coming in. Nerd writes, just tech oligarchs giving money to powerful people. At some point, the tech oligarchs become more powerful than the politicians they give money to. Certainly, there was a lot of chatter earlier this year that Musk was essentially the de facto president of the United States. And I think you could make the case for that, where he could just make unilateral decisions on ending U.S. aid and shutting down entire government departments. At TIFO says, I'd say it leans toward power concentration on such massive compensation centralizes too much influence in one individual. And I think you're absolutely right. Keep on Living says, taxing the filthy rich solves many problems. And I share your sentiment. I don't think there's anything filthy about being rich or wanting to be rich. Certainly, but according to a lot of people, they would say, take some of TJ's away. I don't think it makes you filthy, but I do think it does make you out of touch. It makes you conditioned to think, well, every idea out of my brain is genius because everyone's telling me what a genius I am. When you're a billionaire, it's harder for people to say no. It's much harder for anyone to say you are wrong. And it creates this hubris. And unchecked, it can really lead to a lot of problems. And that's why I think we need some way of diffusing the power, because great wealth is great power. There's always checks and balances in a democracy. Nothing is 100% pure. We don't have 100% democracy in the sense that pure democracy, if I get whatever I want to vote for, I could vote for the same person to be president and a senator and a member of the House and my governor. Well, we don't do that. We say we're going to limit any one individual's power. They can only hold one office. The problem is once you're a trillionaire, you basically control all the offices. Everyone is afraid of you. Everyone's coming to you for money. Everyone's afraid that if they cross you, you can spend so much money attacking them in political ads, you can destroy their life. And again, there's just no, as a practical matter, there's no difference between that and being a king. And if it's one thing Americans across the political spectrum have agreed with, conservatives, radicals, liberals, libertarians, is that we don't want kings in the United States. More in a moment.
We'll be right back after this break. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Most people can't afford a full-time coach. And even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Want to advertise to ambitious upscale professionals who actually care about communication, success, and results? Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. And no, we don't take ads for crypto, supplements, or junk food. If you've ever struggled with nerves, unclear messaging, or just not being taken seriously, this is for you. I created the TJ Walker Success Library as a crash course in professional level communication. You get 5 downloadable books for just $9.95. that walk you through public speaking, media training, persuasive communication, confidence building, and daily practice routines. This is the same training I've delivered to presidents, CEOs, and leaders in 45 nations, boiled down and instantly accessible. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download them now.
Welcome back to Filtered. Issue 4, Michael Burry versus the AI High Flyers. A legendary win can become a dangerous lens. Michael Burry is back with a bearish swing at the AI leaders. Now, if you don't remember him, he's the guy that the movie The Big Short was based on. He's the guy who basically called it correctly that we were going to have a massive crash back in the aughts. He was 100% on the money back then. And perceived rightly so as being a brilliant guy. Well, he's back. He disclosed put options totaling about $1 billion against Nvidia and Palantir. The pitch is simple. If there's an AI bubble, those bets could pay off big. The caution is simpler. Don't panic sell just because a celebrity bear is short. Since his housing market triumphed nearly 20 years ago, Burry has issued crash calls that were early or wrong repeatedly. He shorted Tesla in 2021 and later exited while tech kept running. The recurring issue isn't intellect, it's timing. One spectacular win creates a halo, confirmation bias kicks in, and everything starts to look like the next big short. Don't let someone else's legend set your risk. So, what's the real message here? The guy who is behind the big short, the guy who got it right with the real estate bubble in 2008 is now saying, we're going to have an AI crash. Should you listen to him and sell everything? Not necessarily. He's been wrong almost constantly on all of his predictions ever since. People often get it right once and they continue making that same call for the rest of their career, like Dr. Doom. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. What does this really mean? I just mentioned the Dr. Doom. That's Nouriel Roubini, another person who got it right in the 2008 housing crisis. He's been predicting recession and crash ever since. So this happens frequently, and I'm fascinated by it as a communications issue because communicators, people in the media, they see someone who's famous, they see someone who got it right. They're attracted to someone famous like this. They're also really attracted to someone who says something scary. Saying we are going to have a stock market crash, sell everything is scary. It's interesting. It's a great headline. And it's much more interesting than saying, okay, the economy is going to sort of stay status quo and not go up more than 5% or down 5% in the next year. If you say that, if you're an economist, if you're a Wall Street wizard, you're not going to get any media attention. So these things become self-reinforcing loops. The worst example of this of all time, though, is the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. He has been predicting massive recessions pretty much every year since 2008. He's been wrong every time. Now, at some point, will he be right? Okay, but you shouldn't get credit for being wrong, 19 out of 20 times and being the proverbial broken clock that's right occasionally. And so that is the problem. Could he be right? Absolutely, he could be right. Many wise, thoughtful people suggest we are in an AI bubble right now. There's no doubt about that. But the issue was always, when does the bubble burst? Those of you old enough to remember the dot-com bubble will well remember that in 1997, a ton of people were saying we're in a tech bubble, where this whole internet thing is a giant bubble. It's going to burst, run. And if you followed their advice, you lost out on a lot of money, a lot of upside, because the market didn't burst in 1997. It went up. It went up in 1998. It went up in 1999. You lost 3 good years. So you always have to be careful about people predicting doom. And you got to be aware of people like me. I'll put myself into this, and others in the media, anyone in TV news, radio news, podcasters, we're always on the lookout for something interesting. And it's always interesting to predict the end of the world, a market crash, depression. Does that mean there aren't ever market crashes? Well, obviously not. There was in 2008. There was in 1929. There will be more. We could have one tomorrow. But the one thing I'm absolutely certain of about the future is that I can't predict the future. You can't either, and most people can't. Those who do and get it right, quite often we're lucky, and they spend the rest of their career making the same predictions, and they're wrong, wrong, wrong. But at that point, they've made so much money and they have such a name ID, they can just kind of coast. That is the situation with someone like Robert Kiyosaki, who's made so much money from his Rich Guy, Dad Guy books, speeches, seminars. He could predict every single day on national TV or in podcasts or his own social media that tomorrow the sun will not rise and the moon will be turned into green cheese. And there are people like, oh, that's great. I better prepare and prepare for the end of the world. I mean, they'll just believe him because he's famous. There is authority bias. We all are victims of it occasionally. There's confirmation bias where, again, if you became famous and rich and successful for making one prediction, saying everyone else thinks the market's going up, I say it's going down because of this, you start to look at the whole world through that prism. So you got to be careful about that. Is he accurate in his technical analysis of what could be some of the weaknesses of these companies? Well, absolutely. Obviously, a company like Nvidia and a company like Tesla are subject to crash. I mean, you can make the case that Tesla is a meme stock at this point. Its valuation is so bizarre and out of whack with any conventional company doing similar things. But Nvidia does have gigantic revenues. Obviously, they have a $5 trillion market cap. Could they fall? Well, absolutely. You don't need to listen to me or Michael Burry or anyone else. Just listen to Jensen Huang, who says, as we talked about yesterday on this program, China could put us all out of business. China is getting further and further ahead with AI. Other commentators like Scott Galloway have pointed out that China may just take on a long-term nationalistic policy that they make the best AI products and large language models and release them for free to the world, which could essentially destroy the US stock market, because why would anyone pay for the stuff if they can get it for free and it works perfectly fine? So there's all sorts of risk out there regarding valuations and artificial intelligence and tech companies that could be overly priced. And full disclosure, I do have a lot of holdings in Nvidia and all of these companies through mutual funds I own. So I'm not trying to talk up my book. They may all go to zero. That is the real risk with any stock you own. It could, in fact, go to zero. But I also want you to be aware of the biases and how people are trying to communicate to you and why you're hearing their messages. So when you hear someone like a Michael Burry or someone like a Nouriel Roubini, also known as Dr. Doom, or you hear someone like Robert Kiyosaki predicting doom, realize that's their shtick. They've been doing it for decades, and they're never called on it. There's no, you don't get called out in the media. It's very rare for the media to say, okay, you made one prediction right 20 years ago. You've made 14 others that were wrong, 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 wrong. Now let's hear your prediction. They don't like to do their homework that way. Well, here at Filtered, we try to do our homework. Okay, it's been a big political week. We're going to wrap up our last big issue of the day, talking about the political scene this week and some larger reflections and implications. More in a moment.
Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill, and it's trainable.
Welcome back to Filter. The elections, why both parties should worry. Victory laps can turn into trapdoors. So it's been a fascinating week of politics with the election results coming in Tuesday night. Senator Ted Cruz, the Republican, sounded the siren on Fox, calling this week's results a disaster for Republicans and a warning sign after Democrats swept marquee races from Virginia to New York City. He warned the left is energized, outraising and outvoting the right, and that complacency could turn a bad week into a midterm catastrophe. But it's not that simple. Democrats have a problem too. The socialist label thrills part of the base, but spooks the middle. National polling keeps socialism, that word, underwater with the broader electorate. If Democrats let the brand drift that way, whether they want to or not, they risk losing the independence they need to hold these gains. Plus, people who just consider themselves moderates or even liberals but don't like socialism. Bottom line, Republicans face a turnout and a money deficit. The Democrats face a branding and persuasion deficit. Both can lose from here. Okay, so what's the real message? The election this week had good news and bad news for the Republicans and for the Democrats. The good news for the Democrats, they won big everywhere by much bigger margins than anyone thought. Their turnout surged. That's bad news for the Republicans. But the Republicans got some good news too. And that is they've got a new boogeyman. And boy, is he scarier than Nancy Pelosi. He's a certified bona fide Democratic socialist. And that's a word that sends chills up and down the spines of moderate voters across the country. Okay, let's take a look at some of the facts here in greater detail. So again, to clarify, Ted Cruz is a smart, savvy political operator. People don't like him personally, but everyone thinks he's smart. He's certainly weathered a lot of tough political storms. And let's not forget, he almost got the Republican nomination for president in 2016. And certainly you have to consider he would run again if there's ever an open campaign for president again. So he's hitting the right notes. He's saying, look, Republicans need to take, first of all, this no King's Day thing seriously. He was out front on that, to his credit. He wasn't simply giving partisan spin. Oh, that was a day of hate. He was putting on sort of his political strategist hat, saying this is a problem for Republicans because there is growing, mounting intensity of anger by our opponents. It's not enough in politics to just have people kind of sort of side with you and not like the other party. It's much more powerful if they hate the other party so much and they're willing to march and go out in rain, snow, sleet to vote for you and help you. That's Ted Cruz's concern right now. The Republicans don't have the energy that the Democrats do. When he witnessed things like not just the No King's Day, but the massive turnout in places like New York City this past week, and the massive loss. We're talking about double-digit losses in a place like Virginia, where Trump has done extremely well, and Republicans have won the governorship there before. So it's that intensity and the expectations game that the Democrats did so well in. So Ted Cruz is rightly concerned, and I think he should be. Now, let me give you the honest, unbiased analysis here, because I'm here as a sane, sensible centrist. Do I have opinions? Sure, but I try to give you honest, straightforward analysis that doesn't necessarily appeal to any one party. So I'm gonna give you kind of the worst case scenario for the Democrats. I do legitimately think that as talented as the new mayor-elect of New York City is, Zoran Mondani, the fact that he might actually be very popular, he might do good things, he might go down in history as a great mayor, he might get reelected. Aside from all of that, this is Christmas, birthday, New Year's, all wrapped into one for Republican strategists. And let me give you a little background. For my entire life, Republicans have run on the message of you've got to vote for me because my Democratic opponent, no matter how centrist he is, no matter if everyone thinks of this Democrat as a conservative, and believe it or not, there used to be a lot of conservative Democrats, and there still are. The Republican campaign message was always, you can't vote for the Democrat because he's too liberal or too far left. And in the last decade, it's been, they're socialists. If you vote for the Democrat, it's going to be 1972 Fidel Castro Cuba with everyone driving around in old rotting cars and starving to death. That has been the primary political message emanating from the Republican Party during campaign season. And it often works. It is effective because Americans don't like socialism. They don't like communism. But here's the thing. It's always been arguably either a stretch or just an absolute flat out lie, because Democratic candidates, by and large, and Democratic officials, almost unilaterally or without opposition, oppose socialism. They don't embrace socialism. They're not members of the Socialist Party or the Democratic Socialist Party, almost without exception, until now, because now you have arguably the highest ranking Democratic official in the entire country, if you want to look at it that way, because New York City, home of 8 million people, home of Wall Street, really the cultural capital of America. It's the capital of the media. Whoever's mayor gets the biggest spotlight is now someone in the Democratic Party who calls himself a democratic socialist. And no matter how many times people say democratic socialist, Republicans, conservatives, a lot of moderates, the only word they're going to hear, they're not going to hear that first word. They're going to hear the second word, socialist. And it scares people. People fear all of a sudden, no free market. All of a sudden, I can't buy a new car. I have to steal a 1957 Chevy and keep it together with chewing gum. That's what people hear. So as good of a day as it was for the Democratic Party, and it was a very good day this past election, and as talented a media communicator as Mondani is, and I think he's an extraordinary talent, I do think that this is going to be a huge problem for Democratic candidates in all the swing districts that really decide who runs Congress. Because now you're going to have a situation where in every swing district where, sometimes voters pick a Republican to go to Congress, sometimes they pick a Democrat. Now what you're going to have is in every one of those races, the Republican is going to say, vote for me because the other guy belongs to a socialist party, and they're going to show a picture of that guy or that woman right next to Mondani. And sometimes they're going to have it morph into the same person in a humorous way. And they're going to have a quote of Mondani saying, I'm proud to call myself a democratic socialist. And the socialist will be in all caps about 20 font sizes larger than the Democrat. And it is going to have some negative impact. It's absolutely true that the word doesn't scare people as much if they are younger. If they're under 40, a lot of people don't mind the word socialism. But let's face it, a lot of voters, especially in swing districts, are over 40 in both parties. They've got the time, they're following politics. So let's look at some more of the facts here. According to Pew in 2022, 36% of Americans had a positive view of socialism. So it's not exactly a word like pedophilia, okay? But 60% have a negative view of this. And it hasn't really changed. Gallup took a poll in 2025. 39% viewed socialism positively. So it went up 3%, although not really that statistically insignificant. 57% negative overall. Again, not really statistically significant. The point is, a lot more people can't stand the word socialism than like it. Now, because of this weird quirk in American politics, there's much more power given to certain locations. Rural states, rural congressional districts, because of electoral college politics, gerrymandering, simply have outsized influence in not only who gets to control the White House, but who gets to control the Senate and even the House. In those places, in rural areas, the word socialism has a special taint. It won't, because here's the problem. If you're a Democrat, and let's say you're a conservative Democrat, let's say you're right down the center ideologically, or even right of center, your opponent's going to spend all the time saying, don't vote for this guy. He's the party of socialism, and he's going to vote for socialistic party leaders. Look at his number one leader, Mandani. And so now that candidate is going to have to spend time saying, yeah, I'm a Democrat, but I'm not this kind of Democrat. It creates all of this tension back and forth, putting the Democrat on defense. Now, Republicans have their baggage as well. You've got, according to some polls, someone who could be the next Republican nominee for president, Tucker Carlson, openly cavorting with and hanging out and palling around with and platforming Nick Fuentes, an out and out avowed Nazi, someone who loves Hitler, someone who thinks Jews are a real problem. And there's some divisions there, but let's face it, Tucker Carlson's not elected to anything. He's not officially a Republican Party official, although you could say he's the de facto head of the party. It's just not the same. So that's my message to Democrats is you've got to think how to package this and how to deal with this issue. And it may even start with the idea of lobbying, begging Mandani to just call himself a Democrat and drop the S word. Now, that's hard to do when you've run your entire campaign and your persona is based on that. But it is a political problem, and I don't think it's going to easily go away and say, oh, TJ, you're old. You're an old boomer. The young people, young voters, they don't care about these labels anymore. I'm very skeptical of that school of thought. What do you think? I would love to hear from you. It is Friday. We are live in the show today, as we are every day. A lot of shows want to give you this prepackaged stuff, everything edited, finely written, rewritten, vetted, every on takeout. No, I'm coming to you live each day, and you may be watching the show as a video on demand, but we're giving it to you live so you can see everything in live time and warts and all. Let's skip now to the grab bag section of the show. America's stress check. Stress is the new soundtrack of American life. A new APA survey finds a weary country, young adults eyeing the exits, meaning they actually are considering leaving the country. Most Americans are more anxious about the nation's future, and loneliness cutting deep. What struck me is the most interesting about this poll is the fact that so many young people, 63% of Americans age 18 to 34 are considering moving to another country. They think the United States is so awful or so tension-filled or so likely to be torn apart that they've considered moving to another country. So as someone who spent a lot of time in other countries and sometimes, live in other places for a month, I think it's a good thing for people to live in other countries, be exposed to other cultures. It tends to really make you open-minded, appreciate more of what you have, but also make you realize we don't have a monopoly on everything that's great in the world. I've been to wealthy countries in the world. I've been to very poor countries. I've been to countries that had only been out from underneath the Soviet Iron Curtain for a few years. Every single time I do go to another country, I'm always struck by there's at least one thing I think, wow, they're doing it a lot better than we are. You learn so much by going to other countries. So I would certainly encourage people to spend more time abroad. But here's my biggest message to young people and anyone else thinking of moving out of the country because you don't like the current political situation. Here's my message. Get off your duff, roll up your sleeves. First of all, vote. Second of all, canvass and get more people to vote to support the politicians you think are going to create a better America. If the good people all leave the country, it's only going to make the country worse. So enough of this babyish whining. Now, let's say, for example, you don't like Trump. I get it. I understand. Now, I'm going to leave the country. Trump's ruining the country. Well, guess what? Maybe he's running the country because it's your fault. Sorry to say that, but I know so many people who don't like Trump didn't bother to vote. Or in 2016, they said, oh, Hillary's not pure enough for me. I'm going to vote for Jill Stein. Hillary takes money from corporations. She's equally as bad as Trump. Well, these people are kind of ashamed of themselves and they deny saying that, but it was real. There are also so many people I've encountered, often young people, often minorities, who say, oh, all these politicians are the same in 2024. I'm not going to bother voting. You still think they're the same when people like you are targeted and run out of the country, or you get a rubber bullet or a gas bullet shot into your head and you're knocked unconscious? You still think it's all the same? So my first piece of advice to you is, instead of complain, why don't you do what the people you don't like did? They rolled up their sleeves, they held their nose, they voted for someone that they don't really respect as a human being, but they said, okay, this person is going to institute policies that are closer to what I think should be in an ideal society. So I'm going to hold my nose. I'm in favor of traditional values. I'll vote for the guy who tosses wives to the curb whenever it's convenient. I personally think you should abstain from affairs. I'm going to vote for the guy who cavorts with porn stars. They held their nose, they compromised, they realized politics is not about perfection. It's about the art of the possible. And they got something done. So before you just say, I'm taking my ball and going home, or moving to another country and making that, why don't you try to make this country a little better? And start by A, making sure you actually vote yourself for someone who reflects your values. B, why don't you actually do the hard work of getting in the trenches, trying to convert people, try to convert your own friends on Facebook to support your candidates, not just at the national level, but at the local level, the city council, state legislative races, school board, because that's what the other side has been doing for years. They've been in the trenches, working, showing up at the committee meetings, showing up at the precinct meetings. Oh, TJ, the Democratic Party is just as bad as the Republican Party. They're both corporate tools. I hear that all the time. Here's the amazing thing, and Donald Trump realized this to his credit. Political parties in America are extremely weak. No one in the Republican Party who had any position of authority wanted Donald Trump to win the nomination in 2016, but he realized they don't have the power anymore. If he's able to communicate a message that resonates with voters about their version of a better life, he can take over a party, he can take over a country. You can actually, if you could get two people who share your views and you attend a political precinct meeting, in most precincts in America, you would now have a majority to take over the party leadership of that precinct. All you need are two people. It's not that hard. Now, it's hard to get people to give up staying home watching TV or watching social media to go out to a political meeting. I get it, but it doesn't take money. You don't have to own a TV network. You don't have to be Rupert Murdoch to do it. It can be done, but it's hard work. You know what isn't hard work? Complaining, seeing a friend who posted something on Facebook or TikTok or YouTube saying, wow, this candidate, this politician I don't like just did some horrible atrocity and he's even worse than we ever thought before. Isn't he despicable? Please share. Oh, yeah, I hate that guy. Share. You're talking to yourselves. You've got to start talking to people who are either undecided or are on the other side, but are a little wobbly because what they thought was going to happen didn't happen. And now half their family members are in jail. You got to start talking to those people if you want to have a country where you don't have to leave. So my preference for myself and others, yeah, spend more time in other countries, but make your home country better to start with. That's in part why I'm actually doing this show. My name is TJ Walker. This is Filtered, where each day we look, and when I say each day, I mean 7 days a week. We look at the top 5 stories of the day, filter it through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills, all with the goal of trying to help you and improve you. I like to close each show by taking a question from you about some aspect that has nothing to do with the news and politics, but has to do with something deeper, your communication skills, your personal development skills. So I take these questions typically from my students, and you can write in as well or post them right here. But this question today is coming from one of my students in my presentation skills, give a great team presentation. And Catherine is the name of the student. How can I, as a trainer in the Texas Department of, I won't even say, I don't want to get her in trouble if someone in Texas government doesn't like me, but she's a trainer for a government organization in Texas. She's saying, how can I find the right tools and methods to engage contract monitors throughout my training modules so that the lessons are practical, unifying, and effective in their daily work? Well, Catherine, I'm not an expert on your particular training niche, but what I can tell you is the number one solution that most people don't do is they just ask. You ask people, how did you use this? What if you're doing a training all day long, ask them every 10 minutes, what did you remember about what we just said in the last 10 minutes, and how will you use this in real life? When it comes to presentation skills, and whether you're giving a speech, a briefing, a talk, a keynote, a PowerPoint, all of these things are slightly different, and yet they all have something in common. It's actually very easy to monitor whether it worked or it didn't work. People think of public speaking as a so-called soft skill, like it's this warm, cuddly kitten that you just have to like and can't quantify. No, there's nothing about any presentation you give in a training session that you deliver, or a speech, or a workshop, or a briefing that can't be quantified in the same way that math or accounting or engineering is quantified. The starting point is figure out what is it you're trying to actually train them to do. What's the change behavior you want them to do? Then you've got to think about, okay, what messages will motivate them to take that action? What do they have to know that will motivate them to take that action? Next, you've got to explain that message. Ideally, you've narrowed it down to a handful. You've explained the message. You've given facts about the message. You've given examples about the message. And then you tell a story about the message that's 100% relevant to the message and your audience. Then when you're done, you ask your trainees or your audience or anyone who saw your presentation, you ask them what they remember. If they remember it, it worked. If they tell you, oh, you were great, you were professional, you were calm, you were smooth, you didn't say any ums, it means it did not work. It means you were not effective. You've got to start over again. So that's my general message to you, Catherine, is really hold yourself accountable. Narrow, even if it's a day-long training session, narrow down in your own mind the actions you want to see these trainees take when they're done. Really try to isolate to the key points that are most important, and then spend the rest of your time examples, case study after case study, story after story to drive it home, and then ultimately test. Every training you do for the people in your state government initiative should make the next training a little bit better, because every speech, every presentation can be a mini focus group to make the next one get tweaked and get better. I'm TJ Walker. I'm hoping you get better in every aspect of your life. Thank you so much for joining me today on Filtered. If you got any value out of this, please leave a comment, sign up for notifications, subscribe if you're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, any other social media platform. If you are listening on a podcast platform, please subscribe or follow us there, and please leave reviews. Thanks so much. I will see you tomorrow.